here with James Graham. Jim is the owner of Osiris, the Gulfstar 53. He's done extensive remodeling, work on the boat. We're going to let him tell us a little bit about how and when he acquired the boat and what he's done with it since. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Osiris is a Gulfstar 1974 model MS-53, 50-foot nominal length. The actual length of the boat is actually around 57, 59 feet. You count everything hanging off both ends. Osiris, the name, it actually comes from the Egyptian god of the afterlife. And he's the guy that invented what's called the resurrection. So I bought this boat in 1991. It was a derelict that had been untended for a dozen years in a marina. And I bought it here in Cape Canaveral. And 10 years later, I resurrected this boat into a Model 2000 state-of-the-art vessel designed for safety and comfort. Some of the modifications done first on the exterior of the boat involve rehulling the boat. Gulfstars are noted for having the best living accommodations of any of the cruising boats. Unfortunately, the hulls are pretty badly put together. So when I bought this boat, it's surveyed out with 183 blisters and a substandard hull. So I redid the original hull and then added 19 layers of new fiberglass cloth. 10 layers of fiberglass cloth with what's called isometallic resin, which is twice as strong as the normal resin they build boats out of. And then the final 9 layers are made of vinyl ester resin, which is akin to steel. So in essence, the bottom of this boat is pretty much equivalent to a steel vessel. But the new bottom stops just about 3 inches below the water line that you can see, and continues all the way down around on the keel and up the other side. We also redid the rudder. On the back of the boat there's a balanced spade rudder. I took off the barn door rudder, which makes it nearly impossible to back up a boat and also makes it nearly impossible to turn a boat in tight quarters. So now it has a balanced spade rudder, which allows you to turn this boat in its own length. The propeller, the 4-bladed propeller just forward of the rudder, has what's called a spurs line cutter on it. This little device is steel scissors, and it rotates with the propeller. Should you catch a crab pot, a floating drift net, or any line that could foul your propeller, this spurs unit just chops the heck out of it, and you don't have a problem trying to steer the boat because you don't have any propulsion. And then in reality, at least 4 times in the last 12 years, it has saved the boat. Forward of that, you have the hull, which currently now has 3 layers of Trinidad Boatyard 75% copper anti-foulant on it, and it's awaiting the final layer of Trinidad, what they call SR, the slime removal anti-fouling, and that's put on just before you launch the boat. So that is, you can't have it on more than about 48 hours before you put it in the water. So that weight, all the mains like that are on premise. They're already purchased. If you see further forward on the hull, just about underneath the main mast, on either side of the hull are 4 1-foot square copper plates that are to the outside of the hull. These are the lightning system of the boat. These 4 square feet of copper on each side, 8 square feet total, are ended to the main mast using a welding cable, a very thick welding cable. On top of the main mast and on top of the mizzen mast are the 4-spar static dissipators. These are aluminum rods with a stainless steel spray on the top. The spray discharges any ion buildup on the boat should you get into an area of thunderstorms. So in essence, electrically, the boat is equal to the level of the ocean. Rather than having a 60-foot pole sticking up in the sky, you've got now a flat piece of boat, right even with the ocean. That does not mean you will not get hit by lightning. You can get hit by lightning because the surface of the ocean gets hit by lightning. So that brings up part 2 of the lightning protection system, which is the 4 square feet of copper connected to the masts. Should you take a lightning strike, lightning will come straight down the aluminum mast and go straight out those big plates right into the ocean. What happens with a normal boat is the lightning comes down the mast and goes running around inside the boat, taking out all your electronics. Now, I've never been hit by lightning, so I really don't know whether it works or not, but the theory is good. Further forward on the hull is a little bulb just underneath the bow of the boat, and that's a interphase scanning sonar. In essence, the interphase scanning sonar is underwater radar. It shows you the contours of the ocean floor in front and underneath your boat. And it scans 180 degrees port to starboard and 90 degrees from sea level to straight down, and presents that on an LCD screen in the cockpit. Further up on the boat, we have the bow platform, which originally was teak. And it just was a pain in the butt to keep that, 1, clean, and 2, varnished. So the teak went over the side, and there's now a 2-inch thick starboard polyurethane board up there. And rather than having just 1 anchor chock and 1 anchor system, which comes on the original Gulfstars, we now have dual anchor system. The starboard anchor is a Fortress FX55, which sits on 400 feet of 3/4 inch nylon. The port anchor is a 66-pound Bruce sitting on 300 feet of 3/8 inch chain. So wherever you go, you have a choice, if you're in a sandy bottom, to use the Fortress for maximum holding, or if you're in a rocky bottom, you can use the Bruce to simulate you're tied up to mooring in the rocks. And if you come up above the bow platform, you will see that the forestay is encapsulated in a profurl roller reefing system. The profurl is not a roller furler, it's a roller reefer. The difference between the 2 machines is that a roller reefer will roll the foresail, the Genoa or your Yankee or your jib, in and out under full load. You do not have to unload the sail to get it out or get it in. A roller furler, you cannot have any load on the sail if you're rolling it up or letting it out. And that is a beautiful system, world tested for 20 years. It's a great system. Further back, the main mast itself is 62.5 feet tall, including all the strange things on top. One of the strange things on top is, of course, a tricolor, an anchor light, and a strobe. I put the strobe on there because when I'm crossing the Gulf Stream or out in the middle of the ocean, and one of these cruise ships comes trucking down the Gulf Stream, they're not really looking where they're going, and they can't see a sailboat. So I turn on that strobe and they see me because it's a huge white flash. And once they recognize that I'm there, then you can turn it off. Also, the main mast has been extensively modified. The original Gulfstar had 2, a forward and an aft external halyard. The halyard went up to the top of the mast, across the cap piece, and back on down. That has been changed, so now I have internal halyards. They run inside the mast, go up to the top. 2 halyards go aft, 2 halyards go forward. So you have your number 1 halyard for your foresail, and you have a backup halyard, a number 2 halyard, should you want to throw up a spinnaker or something else. After the mast, you have the number 1 main halyard for raising and lowering the mainsail, and you also have a spare halyard after the mast that should, for some strange reason, you let loose of the main halyard and it goes roaring up to the top of the mast, you can just clip on the number 2 halyard and you're back in business again. or you can use it. We use it for launching the dinghy and bringing the dinghy back in. There's 100 different things you can use the number 2 halyard for. There's also been a storm sail track installed on the mainmast should you ever want to brave yourself in the ocean in a storm. The booms are 23 foot long. Originally, Gulfstar made rolling booms. The booms rotated and rolled the sail up on the boom. Great idea, but you could not have a sail that had any shape to it. So that's been changed so that now it's a fixed boom. And instead of the boom and the gooseneck being bolted into the mast, which weakens the mast, it's now encapsulated. The mast is encapsulated with a collar, which holds the gooseneck, which holds the boom. The mainsail itself sits inside a stack pack system that you raise and lower the sail, and it just goes inside the 2 canvas sides, and you just zip them up, and now your sail is protected. There's also 2 radar systems on the boat. On the main mast is a little Apelco 35 watt radar, which I use for all night long in the middle of the ocean, low power. And on the mizzen mast is a large Furuno dual EBL 1890 45-mile radar. It is highly accurate and has never in 12 years ever failed. It is really good. In fact, it's on a tilting platform, so that if you wish, you can actually tilt the radar system over to have it level with the ocean. Although I've never had to do that, it's available. On top of the mizzen mast is a wind generator, and halfway down the mizzen mast is the number 2 wind generator. They're capable of putting out 40 amps of DC power at 12 amps in about 20-25 knots of wind. So when you're anchored somewhere in the islands and you've got the good trade winds, you really don't have to run the engine or run the generator in order to charge your batteries. The wind generators will do it for you. Also on top of the pilot house are 3 solar panels, 2 120 watt panels and 1 90 watt panel. Those back up the wind generators should you be in a situation where there's not much wind. There's also installed on both masts the stair system so that you can go up and down the mast without having to use a bosun chair if you don't want to. It's very convenient when you're trying to fix something or restring a halyard or restring a flag halyard to have those stairs. And I use them in the ICW to look over the trees and see what's going on in the farmland next to the ICW, because the ICW can get quite boring. The pilot house on the boat is an addition. Gulfstars do not come with a pilot house. That was put on the boat, and it's all aluminum because we do most of our work in the ocean and in the Caribbean, where you can get some pretty nasty storms. And we can sit in that pilot house and be perfectly dry and comfortable as the waves are crashing over the boat. It's one of the best things we ever put on the boat, because we use the pilot house as kind of like a penthouse. There's a dining room table up there where you can entertain and serve dinner to friends. There's computers where you can watch movies. There's a million things you can do up in that pilot house. It's fabulous. Not to mention which, the pilot house also keeps the sun off you, which is a big deal in the tropical and subtropical regions. The mizzen mast is basically a duplicate of the main mast. It has the same stack pack system and the same 4 halyards, 2 forward, 2 aft, although the forward ones are not really used. I dreamed about putting a mizzen spinnaker on the boat, but I never got around to it. So again, you have lots of halyards for lifting and moving things around. There's just no ends. You just don't want to come up short on having the ability to lift and move things on and off the boat. Back to the hull for a minute. The boat came, and most boats come with, the older boats come with bronze through hulls and seacocks. Those were all removed. And the biggest problem with bronze seacocks and through hulls is electrolysis. The copper leaches out and the thing becomes brittle and breaks off. All the through hulls and seacocks are now the Marlon series, made in Australia. These units are used by Beneteau and Genoux on their boats, and I figure if it's good enough for Beneteau and Genoux, it's good enough for me. Now they're not ball valves, they're seacocks, real seacocks. And they have a triangular flange on the bottom of the valve. That flange is through bolted to the hull. So there is no load on the seacock itself. You can stand on them, jump on them, and they're as strong as anything you can have. And there's no electrolysis. Gel coated and then painted. You can take that off.
That's just a drain, right?
Yeah, that's just to keep the head in the place.
I just want to get a picture of the lazarette. This is the lazarette in the locker. After that. But we're going to ask you to make the kind of thing a little bit.
Okay, Jim.
Okay, we're up on deck of Osiris right now, on the starboard side midships. The modifications to the mainmast of bringing the halyards outside, bringing the halyards internal to the mainmast and doubling them up. Besides that, I also brought all the halyards and control lines and sheets and reefing lines down to the bottom of the mast through turning blocks, through a fair lead, back into the cockpit. This boat is now totally controlled from inside the cockpit. You do not have to go to the mast, either one, to do anything. It's all run into the cockpit through clamps and winches inside the cockpit. There is a 4-spar power bang on the main mast, which allows you to, of course, trim the mainsail when you go far out off the wind.
All right.
Now all the standing rigging on the vessel, all the standing rigging, which is all the steel wires, has been replaced. It is all new in the year 2001. And it is made out of the British diform wire. Normal rigging is made by 119 round wire, which has 19 strands of round wire woven together. What the British do is they take that wire and they put it through a die and flatten it. And what that does is gives you one size larger wire for the same nominal size installation. So the rigging, not only is it new, but it's also twice as strong as the old rigging, and you get twice the life out of it. We added stainless steel stairs or ratlines so that you can climb the mast and get up to do any servicing you need to do, or just for sightseeing purposes. The decks of the boat have been totally reworked this year. All the old gel coat, cracks, delamination, everything else has been repaired, removed, replaced, repaired, and then we painted the entire deck so that now it has a fresh coat of linear polyurethane paint.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to.
Okay.
Now, I talked about the Profurl roller reefing system. We also have modified the bow pulpit with all new stainless steel pipe that is cut and modified so that if you bend anything, you just replace one section. You don't have to replace the entire thing. You just replace anything you bend. On the bow of the bolt is this loop. On normal North American boats, that's a fixed loop. But on European boats, they typically go bow to the dock or bow to the quay to get on and off their boat. So what I did was I made this bow loop removable. There's 2 set screws that you loosen, and that loop comes right off. And now you can walk on and off the boat across the bow platform.
Sorry about that.
All the hatches on the original Gulfstar boat were made out of teak boxes, which was horrible to maintain, paint. The plexiglass windows crazed and fogged up. So we took all the hatches off and we put the Lumar Ocean Series hatches, brand new Ocean Series hatches, one over the B berth, one over the main salon, and one over the aft cabin.
Go ahead.
We also removed the teak handrails that run down the boat, because not only are they a pain in the butt to paint and maintain, they don't last long. So we replaced them with stainless steel pipe that runs the entire length of the foredeck here. So there's no problem hanging on when you're going forward or aft. You can attach your jack line to them, whatever you want. Foredeck, forward of the main mast, you'll see 4 eyelets. Those are the tie downs for the dinghy. You lift using one of the spare halyards, you lift the dinghy up, you bring it down to the foredeck, lower it on the foredeck, and then tie it down using those rings so that you're not dragging a dinghy or doing anything else with it. It's nice and safe and stored up on the deck.
I don't hear it. Go ahead.
Okay, now one of my pet peeves is falling off boats in the ocean. I don't like doing that. So I have installed on the pilot house and everywhere else handholds. There is always a nice strong handhold for you to hang on should you be moving forward or aft on the boat. The pilot house has them. They're also installed inside the pilot house. Next is the propane. Inside this deck plate
is a sealed vented propane locker. Inside the propane locker are two 40-pound aluminum propane tanks. These tanks will last a normal couple about 2 years. So if you're traveling in the distant areas of the world, you don't have to worry too much about getting propane because you got anywhere up to the 2-year supply of it. The Gulfstars are very short on storage space, especially on deck. So I took a portion of the aft cabin and walled it off all the way across from port side to almost to the starboard side. Installed a hatch, and now we have an aft deck lazarette, which I nicknamed the garage, because in here goes your motors, or your lines, your spare anchors, anybody that you don't like, they all go into the aft lazarette. So you have a place to keep all your extra stuff as if you had a garage at home. Starboard aft corner of the deck, I installed a starboard seat, which is wonderful for sitting and drying off after your swim and everything else, but its main purpose is underneath. Underneath we store your gasoline tanks for your dinghy. So all your spare diesel and gasoline tanks are now have a place for them to be tied down and stored on deck safely. A pallet house has fixed plexiglass windows which were replaced about a year ago. But in the windows that we need to be able to open up for like the primary winches and for other reasons, we installed new vinyl. In the aft window here, we made it in 2 sections so that you can unzip and roll up either section or both sections to get maximum ventilation if you're in an area with not much wind. Inside the pallet house, we have moved all navigation systems and control systems from down below and or on deck inside the pallet house. On the starboard forward side here, we have the main sheet for the main boom. We have 7 clutches that can take care of all the control lines. We have an electric winch for raising and lowering the mainsail or anything else you want to do with it. We have the instruments. We've got the Furuno radar, the interface scanning sonar, an electronic digital navigation system that runs off a computer, and depth sounders. I moved the main controls up onto the eyebrow. Up here we have the single sideband, the #1 VHF radio, the Simrad Robertson AP22 autopilot, which is a fabulous autopilot, and we have your standard ST80 wind, depth, and speed. We also have the CARD, C-A-R-D, collision avoidance radar detector. This is a little device that listens for radar signals coming from other ships, and if a ship is putting out a radar signal, it will light up little dots telling you what quadrant that ship is in.
Okay.
The binnacle was originally in the aft section of the cockpit, but in my logic of having an enormous amount of instruments and all the other good things you want to have, there was no way I could install wings on the binnacle large enough that it didn't totally block out the entire cockpit. So I moved the binnacle up onto this flat platform, and it's hydraulic and electric, so there's no problem with lines or controls. You can put it anywhere you want. Conveniently, it lines up with the main hanging locker down below, so you have a wonderful wireway situation. There's a seat that sits here on a post, and you sit there and you can steer, you can operate all the controls right from here. When we're in harbor and we're not, anchored in harbor, we convert the cockpit into an entertainment and dining area. We remove the seat, which unbolts, and we put a large teak table in place. And with that, we can serve dinners, have drinks, entertain people. It's a wonderful system. We love this pilot house. We spent most of our life up here in the pilot house. We call it the pet house. Now, when I constructed the pilot house, I knew I was going to be sailing in the ocean with this boat. And one of the biggest problems is getting thrown around or losing your balance in the boat. So as I built this pilot house, I installed aluminum pipes in front of every support system. These pipes are not structural. They're there for you to hang on to when the boat is pitching and bobbing and doing whatever it does. So again, safety. There's always a place to hang on to so that you don't get hurt.